Hello, everybody, and welcome to Project HR, a podcast dedicated to building better workplaces. Project HR is brought to you by Projections and IRI Company. IRI helps organizations navigate workplace challenges, improve employee engagement and productivity, manage labor relations, and implement effective communication strategies to achieve their goals. For more information, you can visit Projections online at projectionsinc.com and IRI at iriconsultants.com. I am Jennifer Orquad, Director of Business Development for IRI, and your host for today's episode of Project HR. Now, hiring and recruitment are more challenging today than they have ever been before, which means you'll need every tool in your arsenal to win over the best talent and keep your company on top. That means engaging in best practices when it comes to hiring, but it also means being aware of today's hiring trends and having the clarity to see your company through the eyes of your candidates. To help better assess these trends, as well as understand how our organizations might measure up, today I'm chatting with Mandy Gilbert, the founder and CEO of Creative Niche, a specialized recruitment firm that provides creative staffing and workforce management solutions to multinational corporations, as well as major advertising, digital, and public relations agencies. Mandy's also a speaker, investor, author, and a weekly contributor to Inc.com. Mandy, thanks so much for joining me here today on Project HR.
Thanks, Jennifer. I'm happy to be here.
Now, Mandy, you've had quite a career. Can you share a little bit about your background and what's led you to become such a strong voice in talent acquisition?
Absolutely. I'd love to share my story with you. Funny enough, my path, like many of us, wasn't a straight path. So I actually went to school to become a graphic designer.
Mm-hmm.
And once I was certified and I was ready to get out there and get a job being a designer, I went to a recruitment company for an interview. And well, let's just say they thought that my account management and perhaps my potential recruitment skills were a little bit stronger than my graphic design skills. So I actually was recruited by the recruitment company where I was looking to get a graphic design role. And I've never looked back. So I started at a very young age. I was 23 actually when I got into the recruitment industry. I opened my own agency, Creative Niche, when I was 27, and 20 years later, we're the largest in Canada, and we're in the process of launching in New York City, and we've been behind more than 4,000 successful placements. So that's kind of been my path. I work with leaders every day, and I'm very passionate about what we do. Lots of complexity, lots of changes, and especially as we can all relate to in the last couple of years, especially.
Mm-hmm, for sure. How exciting. I mentioned the challenges facing organizations today when it comes to hiring and recruitment. Do you see opportunity there? Let's talk about silver linings.
Well, I'm a firm believer that, where there are challenges, there are definitely always opportunities. So I think it's a time for organizations who are really invested in understanding and being committed to making some changes to where they stand from a competitive landscape perspective. I think the biggest opportunity is to first understand. And so that means deconstructing your entire employment experience from start to finish. So, first of all, what's your reputation? Do you pay fairly? Are you creative and competitive with the perks that you offer? Do you provide growth opportunities? What's online about you on Google reviews or Glassdoor or similar kind of ranking or review platforms? Are you attractive to your ideal candidates, and different, are you attractive to different, generations and backgrounds? So it's really kind of getting, going into a deep dive about what your employment experience is today. So I'm talking about your job postings, like, are they interesting? Do they differentiate you? Do they reflect the truth of the opportunity? Are they inclusive? So if I meaning that is the language inclusive? Is it welcoming for everybody to participate and apply to your postings? Looking at your interviewing process, how thorough is it? Do you arrive on time? Do your leaders know how to interview properly? Are they engaging? Is it a two-way conversation? Are they present? Are they prepared? And then obviously through the offer stage, and we know today that we have seen more counter offers ever. I've seen more counter offers in my business than in the last 2 years than they have in the 18 leading up to it combined. And in addition to that, you've got competing opportunities. So the offer stage is not a time to come in lower than what you've discussed. So no surprises, keeping that consistency, keeping the candidate engaged and warm, and making sure they're feeling important and valued throughout that process, down to your onboarding. How do you onboard? And if you're fully remote, what does that look like now? If you're hybrid, how does that work? So, really being clear on those first 90 days. Do you have a mentoring program or a buddy program? How thorough are you? Because we know that the sooner a new hire can get onboarded and feel valued and feel as though they're able to contribute value to an organization or team, we know that really impacts retention, right? So,
Hmm.
and then, of course, that continues down to your current employees. What kind of culture do you have? Why do people stay within your organization? Are you keeping it healthy? Are you investing in new things? Because as we know, culture is not a checklist. It's something that you have to put energy and effort to and thought on a regular basis. So that touches on training and development,
Sure.
social,
Yeah.
recognition, letting toxic people go, leading by example, ensuring you've got the right leaders in place that are going to inspire and engage, all the way through to how you offboard people, whether they're being terminated or exited from your business or if they've resigned. So keeping that classy, keeping it, handling it in a sensitive manner. For resignations, making sure your leaders don't take it personal,
Mhm.
and always acknowledging, no matter what the circumstances were, their contribution, so you can kind of protect your that particular employee, whether rightly or wrongly they left the organization. They joined in and they believed in you, and hopefully they contributed something. And so, really acknowledging that, and protecting your employer brand from start to finish, and then understanding how to communicate that change back to your team and company. So, those to me are the opportunities. And I think that when you go through that exercise, you only naturally solve a ton of problems. You come up with some really great ideas. And, at the end of the day, it's great to have your own company as a scorecard and see like would I want to work for this company?
Mm.
How do we rank across the board? So it's a great kind of task force, and it's a great collaborative project that I think that many organizations should consider,
Mhm.
especially in such a competitive market that we're seeing today.
And of course, you rattled off a wealth of opportunities there from inclusive language to talking about culture. How important is it for HR professionals to keep up with the changes? It can be overwhelming. So, what are the best ways to keep up, in your opinion?
I think it's interesting, and whether you're an HR or whether you're a CEO, it really doesn't matter. I think the very first thing is letting go of everything that's worked in the past. I'm a firm believer what got you here is not going to get you there.
Mm.
Things have changed. There's a lot of cool platforms. There's a lot of great resources, videos. There's so much information that we have access to. So creating that space where we're always learning, creating the opportunities to really connect with all of your leaders that you support, I think is interesting, and I don't ever hear or see of that enough. So regular touch-ins, touch bases, like what's happening when their department in their space, because some are so competitive that they have some really significant challenge. And I think when your HR partner understands those, then that really kind of creates that synergy. They'll understand a little bit more about some of the roles they're recruiting for or responsible for, and there's some real magic that can happen with that regular collaboration.
Hmm.
Um, and lastly, I would say that is looking at progressive companies as a North Star. So a lot of individuals, when you talk to them, they'll say, well, they'll just rhyme off some of their competitors and say like, well, we're better than them.
Hmm.
But not looking necessarily within your sector, looking at progressive companies as a whole. Who's ranking? Why are they ranking a top employer? What are they offering? And really understanding your spend and your strategy and making sure that you're kind of iterating on that based on kind of what the opportunities out there for improvement are.
And certainly your work with Inc.com helps making keeping up a little bit easier. You're a weekly contributor there. Has it been a challenge to keep up with that schedule and that cadence to find fresh topics?
Yes and no. Writing is definitely a commitment of time and energy for sure. However, I'm working with a lot of leaders, and there's a lot of changing. There's this is changing landscape regularly in my world. So the content, in terms of the ideas and the quick hits, and tips, for me, it's not so much of an effort. It's more of actually doing the writing and making sure that you're doing that well and meeting timelines for sure.
So, back in December of last year, you wrote an article for Inc.com titled Five Hiring Trends That Will Impact Recruiting in the New Year. And so, since we're like the midpoint of 2022, I thought it would be interesting to revisit those trends, confirm if they're still in play, and see if we have any others to add to that list. So, first, I wanted to ask you about the process of developing a forward thinking article like this one.
Well, always thinking about what's ahead. I think at the end of a calendar year, that's just what we do as leaders: is what's going to happen in the next year, what needs to be kind of our pillars or focuses. I always look at us. We have two New Years. I always look at as January our New Year, and as well as September, kind of back to school as a New Year as well. um,
Mhm.
I think it's important. It's just something that I've done is just like kind of thinking about what's going to be important for the next year ahead. So that's kind of the reasoning or explanation behind it. And it's funny because now that we're kind of halfway through looking at this, there's probably some things that could go a bit deeper or reprioritized. But all in all, I think it captures kind of the essence of what organizations are trying to accomplish and strategies on how to get that done.
All right, Mandy, I'm going to take a quick sponsorship break right now, but when we return, I want to take a look at those hiring trends. Stay with us.
The relationships you have with your employees are critical to the success of your business. In today's ever-evolving political and economic climate, those relationships can also be the most vulnerable. Employee dissatisfaction can lead to union organizing activity, potentially disrupting operations, leading to costly lawsuits and negative publicity for your company. The I Labor Relations Consulting team brings with it a wide range of expertise, from former labor management executives to human resources professionals, and even award-winning communication experts. We'll help you create an environment where employees feel valued. Our goal is simple. We help your company thrive while creating a positive working environment. Get started today with a personalized labor relations readiness assessment from IRI. We'll provide you with a customized roadmap and the resources you need to succeed. Visit us at iriconsultants.com to learn more.
I'm back with Mandy Gilbert, founder and CEO of Creative Niche and a weekly contributor to Inc.com. So, Mandy, your hiring trends list began with an increased focus on diversity and inclusion, but you approach this familiar topic with a very technical approach. Can you share that with me a little bit?
Sure. I mean, I think that given the critical role talent acquisition and recruitment play in the growth of a company, everyone's looking for a well rounded DEI focused recruiting process just to help them eliminate any bias and nurture a more inclusive talent acquisition program and strategy. Many organizations are turning to various platforms that remove any potential bias out. So, that's definitely been a trend. That's not necessarily a new trend. That's probably been in play for a couple of years, but I think more and more are adopting and onboarding new tech as part of their recruitment strategy and program internally. That helps equity and all aspects of your hiring process, from sourcing, job distribution, referrals, job descriptions, application reviews and screening tools. Some organizations are doing assessments early on, so you can really compare a candidate fairly and equitably.
So, it's safe to say that this trend remains an important one from where we stand right now. Any advances, any changes to note here?
I will say that it's a shame it's 22 to 22 and we're talking about how this is a priority now.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
should have been for a long time coming. Incorporating tech in your recruitment platform and your strategy and approach to it is not going to change. If you have leaders who are known or have a tendency to show bias and only hire like people, I think that really needs to be approached. And there needs to be a strategy in place, definitely, to hold leaders accountable to certainly removing that and having an equitable and fair hiring practice. That being said, I really think DI training needs to happen at the top. Diversity is not a checklist. This is the way we should all be living. And we need to always continue the conversation. We need to do the training. And so when diverse hires are made, that there's a cohesiveness, a welcomeness, there's sensitivity training, there's an understanding of how to foster a diverse work environment and culture. And I would just love to see more visibility on hiring and more accountability for organizations. And I'm talking about visible matrix that are shared, because as much as I love to say that the needle is moving, I would love to see it in all sectors across the board and all
Hmm.
functions across the board.
Yeah.
There's a lot more work to certainly be done there. So, I myself continuing the work and within our company, just looking at everything that we can continue to do and to kind of keep those conversations happening and our training and awareness, front and present always.
Hmm. And you also included a discussion of the use of increased incentives and referral programs. Is this primarily in highly skilled positions, or has candidate scarcity made this trend sort of across industries and positions?
I would say that they're kind of across the board for referral programs and different incentives for sure. We talked a little bit about the counter offer. So we've seen a lot of organizations offer significant increases to keep their employees, more so than we've ever seen, as I mentioned before. And hiring referral programs, yes, some are more skilled and positions in tech. We've seen them as high as $10,000, $15,000 for a referral, successful referral that's hired within an organization. But we've also, heard and seen this in a retail space, because everyone's really had some labor challenges and specialization challenges. So employers have been kind of very keen to adopt and try different ways to
Hmm.
get people attracted and hired within their organization.
And I love the idea of perks and non-financial rewards. Is that something that's also a trend, or have you seen that come about?
For the yes, financial incentives, yes, and there's some that you can be creative depending on the flexibility and the control that you have. If you work for an entrepreneurial company, it's a lot easier to get creative
Mm.
than a larger corporations. But we've seen other incentives can be paid time off. A tech gift like some great new the AirPod Maxes, or a gift card, or an experience of some sort. So it doesn't have to necessarily be thousands of dollars, and it also could be time, and it also could be acknowledgement for the impact that that individual has made to the organization as well, as part of that. So there's a number of different things and ways you can get creative. And I going back to that deconstructing your employment experience, I think there's some great ideas that can percolate out of that as well.
For sure. So on your trends list was also a cross-country shift to hybrid employees. So that shift from fully in person or fully remote to hybrid. So do you think hybrid's here to stay, in your opinion, or is it contingent on other factors?
I think hybrid is here to stay, and I think that's awesome.
Hmm.
I think the shift, this radical shift we went through in such a short period of time, like when organizations and leaders were thrown into being kind of trusting and progressive,
Hmm.
uh, is that I remember even before the pandemic, you would never want a child in the background, a dog barking. Like you really just had to have this persona that there's nothing
Right.
going on in your life.
Right. Right.
And like all of that just kind of went to the side. And I hope that stays as a norm for us, because we are humans and there's other facets to our life. And I also think that it's time that we actually trusted our employees more, and give them a lot more flexibility so they can have a great balance in their life. I'm always a fan. If you hire the right people, it doesn't matter where they're working or who's around them. They're just going to be contributing to the business once they know how to be successful,
Hmm.
and they're engaged and they've got the right tools and support to be successful. They're just going to be great employees whether they're in person or not. So hybrid is definitely here to stay. Fully remote is a tough one. I think we'll see companies move towards hybrid. I think some of the first, some big tech companies came out of the gate saying that's it, we're 100% remote. We're going to, lease off our spaces. We're making a commitment. Anyone can work anywhere. We're slowly seeing that change to
Hmm.
hybrid. Some organizations who claim to go remote first are saying, okay, we're actually going to be back full time or majority of the time. And I think that's a way of, developing and contributing to culture, but also it's incredibly hard to be a creative and innovative company when everyone's remote because
Hmm.
something happens as soon as you're on a platform, staring at a video and looking at other people. It just to me anyway, it's like my you're creative, like your alpha brain, your alpha waves in your brain just die. There's something
Hmm.
about it. But I
Hmm.
also think it's really difficult for juniors because when I started my career, I shadowed a number of people in boardrooms and
Hmm.
heard people get turned down on the phone in a sales pit environment. Well, we don't really have that shadowing that happens naturally, and planned shadowing is just that, it's planned, so you're not really getting that kind of real-time experience.
Hmm.
So I do think that we will see a big shift to hybrid, and I think that's exactly where we should stay. I think that's a happy balance, and I think that employees will enjoy having a hybrid option as well.
Hmm.
A lot of people do not actually want to be fully remote. They just want to know why they're going into the office. Like they want the why factor, and to be connected to it. And I think that's entirely okay.
Mandy, it's time for another quick break. We're going to be right back after this. You're listening to the Project HR podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Orqua, and my guest today is Mandy Gilbert, founder and CEO of Creative Niche and a weekly contributor to Inc.com. We are back. Now, Mandy, the next trend in your article was the idea of a return to hiring internal candidates. And considering the cost efficiency of hiring internal candidates, I marvel at why we turned away from this in the first place. So, why did that fall out of fashion?
Well, I don't know if it actually, totally fell out of fashion. I think this is another great byproduct of the pandemic, actually, is looking at internal employees and making an investment to getting them ramped up to take on more responsibility and helping them grow internally because, well, it was trickier to bring leadership in or management in when you couldn't really do that culture transfer. So I think that's kind of happened and it's happening more. And, as a leader, an entrepreneur myself, I would say that 9 times out of 10, when I've brought in a more senior employee in, they haven't necessarily been well embraced. They were great at interviewing, but actually my team ended up training them in parts of their role. They didn't understand our culture. And I'm not saying that's going to be the case in across the board, but I think it's actually a really refreshing and great way to look at your team and making sure that, is everyone, at their full potential? Is somebody ready to take on more? And not look at things as so much and as like a cookie cutter. Like if you have somebody leave the organization, can you divide their role up? And pay 3 individuals on your team more to take on those responsibilities versus bringing somebody else in. So growing your people and then hiring juniors that you can foster and grow within is a great way to kind of look at that. So I've been seeing more and more of this. Obviously, in some of the areas in which we work are tech. They're really funded companies. They need to scale quickly. They don't have always the people to promote because they only hired them 9 months ago or 6 months
Hmm.
ago. So there's different sectors where this just doesn't make sense. It's not a possibility. But I think in a lot of sectors, it could be something that you revisit and make sure that you're growing your people and you're providing them with opportunity to fail and try new things and take on more to kind of build your culture even more and increase your retention rates.
So, last on your list was a focus on employer branding and social issues. And this is all about candidates wanting to work for companies that align with their values and their morals. Is this more important to younger workers, or is this really a universal shift kind of brought about by the disruption of the last few years?
I think it's a shift. And, I think that it's really interesting that we focus so much on younger people and there's so much different, assumptions that are made and, sometimes even, some judgment or bias around some of you hiring younger people. And I would just say that, all generations have so much to offer. We all need to be led in different ways. And it's important for any leader of any age or experience to understand the difference. And they're not because, oh, you're this age, we need to manage you this way. But it's an understanding that, when you grow up in business and in life, we were just treated differently based on when you were born. So, for me, for instance, when I entered the workforce, if my boss wanted to talk to me, I was dead set for sure I was getting fired. Right. And
Hmm.
and some of the younger generations, well, they actually want to have a lot of touch points with you. And so you need to recognize that, okay, well, I'm not like that, but you know what? There's different generations that need a little bit more higher touch, just touch points. How are things going? Great job. They want to be acknowledged. They want flexibility. They do want to know why. Why am I here? Why does the company exist? Why are these our goals? How can I contribute to those goals? How can I be successful? And really kind of, they want to know the bigger picture. And who doesn't want that? I think that's a great way to anchor your organization is around millennials, because I think anybody, no matter what your age, you would like to be treated like how millennials are proving to want to be kind of managed and led within an organization. So I think it's actually refreshing that there's more voice in the workforce and there's more questions. I think it makes us stronger leaders as well. And I think it's incredibly important to embrace all ages and all generations. Everyone brings something kind of different to the table.
And certainly, as more and more candidates enter the workforce, this will definitely remain a trend. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with that. And I think that old school and rigid leaders with, if they have trust issues or they have an uninspiring leadership style, they'll really need to kind of open their minds and do work and embrace that change. Or, they probably won't have a lot more opportunity to stay in the game based on our growing younger
Hmm.
workforce.
Yeah, for sure. So I would say we hit 5 out of 5 on your trends and predictions. If you were writing this article today, would there be anything that you would add to the list?
You know what? There's not anything more that I would add that I didn't already kind of expand on. I think we covered quite a bit. So I think those are great kind of buckets or umbrellas, but I dug a little bit deeper in them, as we went through them. So I don't think there's much more I would add.
So let's not forget to talk about your company, Creative Niche. Tell me a little bit about the work that you do there.
So, Creative Niche is a specialized recruitment company purely focused in tech, advertising, marketing, design, PR. So, we work with 8 advertising agencies, Fortune 500, scaling tech companies, and really everyone in between by helping them find the best talent they need to help kind of grow their businesses. And during the pandemic, we also launched another company called Rise by Creative Niche, which is a plug and play talent acquisition partner to scaling companies. So right now, we service all of Canada, and we're just launching it in New York presently. And you can find out more about us at creativeniche.com or risebycreativeniche.com or my LinkedIn profile if you wanted to reach out to me.
Perfect. And for our listeners, I want to let you know that those links will be included in this episode's companion guide. So be sure to unlock that today at projectionsinc.com/podcast. Right now, though, Mandy, it is time for our lightning round questions. These are questions I ask of every guest of the podcast. Are you ready?
Let's go.
All right. First question is always a topic showdown. In this episode, we've been talking about hiring and recruitment trends. With that in mind, which of these social media trends have you or would you take part in? The Ice Bucket Challenge or a TikTok dance?
So I haven't done either. I would choose the Ice Bucket Challenge for sure, because it's for a good cause. And also my teenage sons would be mortified if I did a dance on TikTok.
That's funny. All right. Next question. What is the best book that you've read recently?
I'm actually reading 2 books right now. One is a reread, and it's Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. I absolutely love it. And I'm reading Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. Also a great book.
For sure. I do that as well. Read multiple books at the same time, and oftentimes a business book and a book for pleasure at the same time. That's
100%.
funny.
Yes.
All right. What's one of your favorite things about the work that you do?
You know what? I partner and coach a lot of, CEOs, senior executives, and I love it. I think that it can be scary at the top, and there's a lot of interesting things that need to be solved as it relates to hiring, org structures, culture. So I love partnering with them. They challenge me, and I'm always learning. So and naturally, it's just really rewarding to make long-term matches that really help businesses and propel careers. So that's something that I love getting into this, and it's something 20 years later that I still love.
Excellent. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Being respected is more important than being liked. It's a huge lesson for me and in leadership and in life.
And last question, who or what inspires you?
I would say what inspires me is innovation and action. And that could be an individual, it could be a company. And I would tell you that despite lots of tragic things have happened through the pandemic, and a lot of sectors were hit significantly. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and leaders, and I would tell you that I have witnessed firsthand, but I've also read about so many fascinating stories on how leaders and entrepreneurs and side hustlers have completely reinvented themselves and their businesses or started businesses through the pandemic. And I've just found so much inspiration in that. And we've talked a lot about a lot of the negative things that have happened throughout the pandemic, and there's a countless amount for sure. I think it would be fascinating to really to highlight some of the great things that have come out of it, because I've seen some pretty amazing businesses and people totally transforming their lives and learning so much during that time.
Love that. Innovation plus action. That's a great mantra. Thanks so much for joining me today on this week's episode of Project HR, Mandy.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. I appreciate it. Take care.
I want to be sure to thank all of our listeners as well. Remember to grab the companion guide for this episode at projectionsinc.com/podcast. If you'd like to be on Project HR or you know someone who would, feel free to email us at projecthr@iriconsultants.com. And last but certainly not least, make sure you never miss an episode of Project HR. Subscribe to the podcast, drop the team a line, leave us a review, or give us a handful of stars wherever you get your content. That's it for me for now. Let's make it a great day at work.